Oh, what's the most vivid nightmare you've ever had? Used to get sleep paralysis. Mostly standard shit crawling at the edge of my vision. But the really bad ones were when a figure I call the Screech would shamble into the room. Hood over face. Once it was looming over me, it would throw its hood back. Its face sort of looked like that creepy Momo meme that went around a while ago, except even more pale, and it had no eyes. It would just loom over me and scream, loud and very high pitch, making my brain and body go fuzzy because my inner ear was under attack. Pretty fucked that the brain can do that to itself. F's in the chat. I got scared just reading this skeptical smiley face. Well folks, that's enough of the internet for tonight. A few years back I'd been stressed about going back to work and I had a lot of sleep paralysis. Nightmares and nightmares where I had sleep paralysis and woke up into another sleep paralysis dream over and over and over. It was the worst. I felt like I was losing my sanity and my grasp on reality. The most disturbing sleep paralysis dream happened after 3 straight days of getting sleep paralysis, and it was something I can barely explain. I woke up and tried to pray. I held my hands together, but I hadn't prayed in a long time and I couldn't remember the words. I realized I wasn't holding my hands together. My left hand was holding someone else's hand and my right hand was laying straight on the bed. I woke up again to the blanket over my face and in full-on sleep paralysis. I tried making noises to wake my husband and heard someone panicking, and then run to my side of the bed and lay their head on my chest with their face facing mine. They were whispering hysterically and I could feel the heaviness of their head on my chest. I'd never been so terrified, but after a few seconds of listening to the whispering, I was able to make out what they were saying. It was a man rapidly saying, "I can't breathe," over and over, gasping for air. I was so scared and I couldn't wake up, so I somehow mustered the courage to speak to him, trying to comfort him, and was able to move my left arm and rub his head and calm him down. His breathing slowed down along with the whispering and he seemed to calm down, and that was it. That man. I heard his voice the very first day I had sleep paralysis in that house. He's the man who was by husband's side of the bed, the same side he came from in this nightmare, and said, "Help me," with so much agony in his voice that made me feel deep sorrow for him. I don't wish these episodes on anyone. Yikes, never experienced this myself yet. How do you snap out of these? Wake up. Also have sleep paralysis. She Loki THICC but creepy eyes, no nose and white skin. Had it 2 times in one night. I can't remember what I saw the first time, but the second time, I saw a pack of wolves that were more like silhouettes. I remember just barely being able to mumble out, "No, no, no," before they jumped me, as I couldn't move. I was too scared to go back to sleep, so I got up for a while and eventually laid back in bed for Leah Teal, WLRCLM, EELA. I just made a transition from day shift to night shift, and during the first week, I'd get sleep paralysis multiple times a day from the irregularities in my sleep schedule. It became so frequent I knew I was just dreaming, and eventually nothing scared me. Except, I was able to feel pain, which was pretty not cool. The moment my eyes opened, the pain was gone. But until then it was excruciating. So bizarre. Dude, I'm never going to sleep now. Our alarm system alerts us whenever an exterior door is opened. The alerts are loud enough to hear throughout the entire house. I had a dream a few weeks ago that I woke up to the alarm saying, "Front door open." I fell right back to sleep. But when I woke up the next morning, the front door was unlocked. So it was either a very vivid and timely nightmare, or someone really did open the door and the alarm scared them off. I'll never know for sure. I'm gonna try to make both of us feel a little better by saying your brain just had one of those. Fuck, did I leave the door unlocked? moments in your sleep. Or you'll be looking for that priceless family heirloom one day and suddenly know what happened to it. Are you guys contacted immediately when your alarm system goes off? Are you able to check the history of the system and see if there really was a break-in? I was pulled over by a female cop. Starts off normal, cop being a cunt, giving me the business. But then somehow the cop has the head of a deer and we start flirting. Next thing I know, I'm making out with the deer-headed cop and she goes down on me. It's super hot at first, but then it starts to feel weird. I feel pain and a lot of wetness. I look down and the deer-head cop is eating my junk. Blood everywhere. I started freaking out and then I woke up. Straight out of a horror movie. Well, that's certainly interesting. How many mushrooms did you eat that night? Jesus Christ, I hate this so much. What the actual F***ck? Edit. Well, it was a dream. I don't know what I was expecting. This gives me visions of a repressed memory involving something similar. To be concerned or not concerned. Damn Bojack, you gotta lay of the juice. I had a dream where I was experiencing two perspectives at the same time. I was the main character that was freaked out cause my dad was gonna catch me drinking, and I was also a spectator of the dream laughing at the main character. I woke up and instantly said out loud, "What the fuck, that's messed up." Double perspective would have had my mind twice as confused a Mao. I've done that, but only in one dream. At the end of it, my perspective kept switching between my own and then the perspective of somebody else in the room. So I kept flipping between the first-person perspective of two different people. That a recurring nightmare as a child that stuck with me just because of how often I had it. It wasn't terrifying, just upsetting to my small mind. I dreamt that Oscar the Grouch and I were in an intense argument. The topic: which of us was more naked? Me with clothes and no fur, or him with fur but no clothes? Apparently your child brain knew the real questions in life. But was the debate ever settled? Reliving trauma. Been there. I used to have nightmares when I was a kid where my dad would say he didn't love me and would ignore me. I remember one where he was a cowboy for some reason playing poker in a saloon and he wouldn't even look at me. Woke up crying. My dad's never made me felt unloved, but he's a truck driver and was gone for long periods of time when I was a kid, so I guess I had abandonment issues. So in one of my nightmares it was doomsday. The sun died. A very strong fire started, and the moon collided with the Earth's atmosphere. Con MLOADA. I had doomsday dreams when I was a kid, but mine were always more of an adventure. It was exciting. It gave me an adrenaline rush. Tornadoes were a common theme. We would be scrambling to gather our belongings and rushing into the basement in my childhood house. Quite often the dream would start off being outside and I would have to run home and beat the tornado. A couple other times it was earthquakes, flooding, or a volcano, but the plot was always more or less the same. It was rarely scary. It was usually thrilling. Like I was starring in my own action movie, but it wasn't a movie, but real. My family was usually present. Sometimes part of the thrill was having to find them and rescue them from the impending disaster, though. I live in a part of the world that has natural disasters like this only once every 300 to 500 years. By the way, I've never experienced anything close to the real thing in waking life. I think my parents just let me watch too much TV as a kid. Was part of the HR team. Shudders. Oh God. My penis for some reason had turned into a piece of bacon and my wife was trying to eat it. Else. My mom and I were in the car driving on the interstate. There's a bicyclist in front of us. My mom speeds up as the bicyclist tries to pedal faster but can't keep up. My mom runs him over and the bicycle goes under the car and catches on fire. And the man rolls and thumps onto the ground behind us. My mom laughed and laughed. And then I woke up breathing really heavily. The bike catching on fire threw me, not gonna lie. Naked in the library. A regular Thursday in Florida. I used to have a lot of dreams where I'm at school. Mostly in the large playground, where 80% of the budget went into. Strange considering how they restricted everything for no reason. Like, there was this Dino staircase on there and you could go under it if you wanted to, and they made it so you couldn't go in. Also, you could never run at a playground, but onto the dream. Usually, I'd be sitting down at a table, and my pants, normally shorts, would disappear, and I'd be so embarrassed I wouldn't move. Sometimes I'd be like, where the fuck are my pants? Quote, happy cake day. Hot days be like. I was followed by a group of men and then stabbed repeatedly in the genitals by them. It was like I could feel it. Woke up sobbing. Had this happened to me as well, my dude? Oh, so you dream PT you were in Ireland, that's fair. Had a nightmare that I killed someone and buried the body. It was so realistic that I woke up in a panic thinking about getting caught and going to prison. Weird part is I don't know who it was or how I did it or why. The whole dream was me burying a person and just knowing it was me that did it. Lying on my bed, ground floor, facing the window, and someone begins to slide it open. I can't move, can't cry out, scared and powerless. Can only make a whine that I hope whoever it is hears and realizes there is a person in the room they are breaking into, or that my husband hears in, comes to check on me. Wake up facing the window and trying to figure out why the window was closed. Took me too long to remember the window doesn't open by sliding it up. Alta low RCM elam meli tn man 1 degree arrow emam eluelteee color. I always have quite freaky dreams. At least compared to other people I know. More memorable and wit : one of my worst, which still chills me, as I was part of a group of people running through a city, trying to escape from some militia or something. And we were going along subway tracks. We climbed out onto the platform, and I noticed my mom was among the group of escapees still on the tracks, and she was the only one still left on the tracks when the train came. I remember me turning my head and screaming loudly when it hit her, and my boyfriend told me I woke up screaming, "Nayudauna at VLR Lyceum Cal Code 0. I know no one will probably see this, but I was around 8. I had a dream I was playing outside with my pink with purple polka dot elephant stuffed animal. Suddenly, the stuffed animal grew 50x bigger and it was alive. The elephant, now towering over me, picked me up with its trunk and squeezed. I woke up in tears. I've hated elephants ever since. Squeezed maliciously or with playful intent, we all need the deets, my dude. Dude, I've had dreams of animals attacking me too. I've repeatedly have had dreams about gorillas attacking me out of nowhere. Yo, I had a stuffed Barney doll when I was little that I adored, but I dreamed that it popped up over the side of the bed with a knife, and I was so terrified of the thing I would never have anyone to do with it again. Begged my mom to get rid of it, but she wouldn't since I had loved it. OMEVAAY. Apparently putting a nicotine patch before bed makes you have insanely vivid dreams. I'm in my room and wake up in a shot. It's a panicking feeling as I look around to see the floor is on fire and a demon is slowly advancing toward me. The demon resembles a human more than you would think. He is big and dirty with razor-sharp teeth and long nails that look like he's been digging. I keep backing away screaming, and it reaches out to grab me with his mouth open wide, making a terrible screeching growl. I manage to scurry off my bed and run down the hallway to a closet where I hide on the top shelf. For a brief moment everything is dark and quiet. In a flash, the inside of the closet is in flames. I start panicking again. It's then that the demon throws the door open and pulls me out in one swift motion. Then I wake up. This is a recurring nightmare I had when I was younger. I wonder what it meant? Interesting but terrifying. hiding in the closet never worked for me either, unfortunately. My father murdering me. Oh my god. How did he do it? I've had that too, but it's not outside my childhood experiences. Got shot in the heart chest at a few feet distance. And the whole dream just paused and forced me to contemplate my imminent death in shock, until I was jerked suddenly awake by the dissonance. Co. AAMD tar N1C. WPAESELTLE Maven CLI roll Alma LAE. Died in a dream. Many dreams will have me being chased, but the dream usually switches before the killing blow, or I hit the ground without dying, etc., etc. Not this time. It was painstakingly detailed and thorough, and that was all the dream was. No background context, just shot center of mass, and died myself awake. Had this happened once, died myself awake. Lucifer himself, in his purest form, came to me in a dream one night. He told me that he was in need of one final soul for the remainder of the night. He said to make it fair, he would bet me my soul in the challenge of my choosing. I pondered for a few minutes, thinking of the way I could win this dark and unimaginable situation. So, I decided on who could give me a better hand. AJ. Either I was going to win, or I was going to receive a handjob worth losing my soul over. Who and man, we're all awaiting the results. I was 5 or 6 years old and my mom said we were going on a vacation. I asked where we were going, and she said it was a special exercise camp. I didn't know what an exercise camp was, but she wouldn't tell me anything else, so I stopped asking. When we got there, there was a giant barn-type building and a man standing up front. We walked up and he greeted us and told us we were going to really enjoy our stay. I looked past him and the barn building was filled with ellipticals, but upside down. The people in the ellipticals were chained to them and looked terrified or exhausted. Most of them were covered in dust. I said, "Mom, I don't like this. I want to leave." And she told me not to be ridiculous and it was going to be fun. The man smiled at me and told me it was normal to be nervous. At first I was too scared to run, so I just stepped inside the building. We walked to 3 ellipticals at the very end, walking past all of the other upside-down people, who were staring at us with wide eyes as if willing us to escape. I didn't know what to do, so I just kept walking. The man was watching us and smiling. I said, "Mom, this isn't right. Something isn't right. Look, all the machines are upside down. All the people are covered in dust." And she just said, "You'll be fine. Stop worrying." She said I was ruining the fun and I needed to just participate. And then the man reached towards me to lift me into the upside-down elliptical. And then I woke up. This would be my brain after going to the gym for one day. I saw my death, not a usual "I died" dream, either. I had a stroke one day, and died on July 29th, 2098, at 9:10 p.m. My wife had died 3 years before me, and my 2 children and 5 grandchildren sat with me in my final hours. I've got a history of having dreams that are as vivid as that come true. Do we have to keep an eye on that date now, my good sir? I woke up to the sound of giggles. I was looking at the door in my room and couldn't move. I saw the shadow silhouette of Kermit the Frog. I heard him say, "Okay, get around him." I got chills, because I knew in my mind that there were some sort of little gnomes or dwarves around me. And I could tell he was about to take a picture. At this point, I started struggling to kick him. He was near my legs. I could barely lift my leg, so it just felt like I was loosely swinging it at him. He got mad and punched my leg. Trigger warnings, a lot. Read at your own risk. Technically, this is a nightmare come true. It started out as a normal dream. Come home from school, take out the dog, do whatever. Dad came home, which was the first odd thing. At that point, I realized the majority of the scene had faded away. No walls, just the floor and abyss around it all. My dad came storming over to me, picked me up by the collar, and starts pummeling me for no reason as I'm begging him to stop, telling him he's hurting me. It hurts. Why is he hurting me? Etc. etc. He doesn't, of course. And eventually I see my own corpse. What's really effed up? My dad morphed into my brother and said that if I can be scared of dad doing that, I should be scared of him doing that too. Faded away because I was pretty sure he'd given me a decent concussion. My brother was a linebacker for football in his high school years, and I was in marching band. So of course I didn't need to know how to defend myself as much as he probably did. TL. Doctor. Seeing your own brother be to you to a corpse and then having part of the nightmare play at a month later is quite unnerving for a minor. The world was ending. Everyone except me and some of my friends died. There was only a single field, about 20 cubic meters, floating in the void. We were in the middle of nowhere without food or water, just waiting to die. It was definitely a traumatic experience which still causes me to have existential crisis. I've had one very similar. It always ends with me staring into the void questioning myself. This one's a doozy, so strap in. The nightmare began with me waking up to the sounds of thunder rumbling. I was lying on a field of grass as gray clouds loomed over my head as it started to rain. That's when I noticed something was wrong. Instead of getting rained on, the water went through me. Like I was a ghost. I walked around and saw my family inside the house nearby. I walked up to the house and like with the rain, went through the door. I looked to see my family having dinner, but instead of it being myself, my mom, my dad, my little brother and my older sister, the place I sat on was filled with a young girl who looked like a female version of me. Her name was even a female version of mine. I called out to them, but it was like they couldn't hear or see me. Then it got worse. My parents said the words I was terrified of. Hey, honey, didn't we have another son? My dad said to my mom, to which she replied, I don't know, dear. He was the only son we had, she said, gesturing to my brother. My dad chuckled at this and went back to eating. That was when I realized I was having a nightmare of my worst fear, being forgotten. I broke down crying, but not for long. I heard the rattling of chains and saw who else but the Grim Reaper. He pointed at me with his skeletal hand and said, You have disturbed the living. For that, they will lose all memory of you, and your soul is mine. I picked myself up and frantically ran out of the house, the Reaper close behind. I cried and cried out to my family to remember me, because I didn't want to die. But nobody came. I was alone and on the verge of death. I closed my eyes in the dream, and it was over. I woke up screaming and crying. I couldn't sleep for literal days after that nightmare. My typical nightmare is just something looking in the window at me, and I can't resist screaming, which then causes it to scream and come toward me. My childhood recurring nightmare was a bear coming down a trail behind my house. My whole family managed to get inside, but I couldn't get closer than approximately 10 feet from the door. Oh yikes on the window, boy. Being betrayed by your dad to have someone hunt you down and kill you. Had it last night after venting to friends about parental issues and ended up dreaming about my dad murdering me numerous ways with a small knife. I could feel his hands on my skin, the cold metal too. All the parental issues. I feel you there, dog. I was being chased around the Wheel of Fortune set by a bloodthirsty dwarf with a ludicrously big eye. I had a nightmare. You had no cake. Happy cake day! Exclamation mark. Thank you lol. I killed my surgeon and was sentenced to death. How does one off a surgeon? When I was a kid, I had a recurring nightmare where I was in the backseat of my dad's old Chevy. The car was driving on a country highway and I could never quite make out the driver. But I knew I was being kidnapped and I wanted out of that car. But it would just keep driving and all I could do, PMNT Coasian el cel lament M title. El na. IWAs on a bus. No one but me. And a drill sergeant. He yelled, "You're being shipped to Ram Ranch, boy." And I screamed a blood-curdling scream. My friends still won't STFU about it. Oh yeah, EEA mountain. EEL meant Lamello-E. Neri. Mully-E. Still alive, and I can remember the texture of their skin and how it felt to twist their joints apart like they were turkey drumsticks for my customers. Sir, your Sweeney Todd is showing. PTSD is a bitch. Whether you relive trauma in dreams or your brain makes up a whole new realistic scenario in an attempt to cope. My city got bombed out of the blue. I got hit by rubble pretty hard, and as I was laying around, surrounded by the ruins of my home, I could legit feel myself dying. I felt my breath getting shallower, my heartbeat slowing down, my consciousness fading, and by the time I died, I woke. I just laid in my bed pretty spooked for a while. I was a demonic octopus that systematically murdered an entire household in their sleep. Spiders, stylish spiders in a house, crawling and roping down on me, literally thousands. And one with a meteor that would wipe Earth out 100%. We all gathered outside and nearly the whole world was crying, saying goodbye to each other. The once atheist PP. Most of them saying prayers too, as it's their very last hope. Fuck man, that's the first time I had to cry after I woke up. And I never cry. 2020. Found it? I fell through a hole in the ground and got eaten by ants. Same but with scorpions. My reoccurring nightmare about huge toilet paper rolls stacking skyscraper high in a circle around me, then falling on me over and over again. It doesn't hurt or anything, I just can't leave the circle. Loto lot led CEOTOL. Sleep paralysis. I had it twice. My brother were gone. I'm alone, can't move. Got so close I woke up crying. The last thing I saw was him going up to my face and opening its mouth really fast. Kinda like in horror games, at the end they flash the lights and there's something scary. Too many horror movies. I was 3 to 4 years old at the time, and I had a dream where Jesus destroyed my toys. Jesus strikes again, man. I remember being in school and was there during a school shooting. When I escaped, woke up, my heart was beating so fast and I was sweating. I've had one of these, but I've also been in 2 heavy lockdowns. Experiencing getting killed. Felt peaceful though. Thank you. The Grim Reaper trying to drag me into hell while I was clinging onto the bed for dear life. For context, I was only around 5 at the time. This might sound weird, but big-ass hornet is wandering around. Open fridge to grab something. Close it. Flies up and stings me. Didn't fall asleep after that. Here's a little fact about me that I don't know how believable it is. I can feel dreams. By that I mean, if I get hurt in a dream, I can kinda feel it. Had this one dream where I had to fight off a group of muggers who were trying to kill me, and I did in fact win the fight, but it felt so real, the fact that I just killed 4 people and had a area. MMAE 10MA at the lab. I will try to answer any questions people may have. I had sleep paralysis one time that I can recall. I've always had extremely vivid dreams that are OEEEE. Yeah, I've seen shadow people when I'm in that not asleep but not quite awake phase. An ex of mine was convinced I had schizophrenia, but I knew I was seeing some evil shit and not hallucinating. Scariest dreams are these twisted ones, all set in areas in the town I grew up in. I've had them since I was very young. The same girl appears in them. Like that girl from the Silent Hill type creepy. I hadn't seen TBE movie until a few years ago. She'll be in my elementary school and writing obscure things on the chalkboard like "they all had to die" or "watch out, you could be next" type of BS. Haven't had this dream in ages, thankfully. Oh, and I've had my fair share of paranormal experiences too, lol. Had this awful one a few days ago and it's still burned into my memory. rather than blissfully forgotten like other dreams. In the dream, I'd gotten home after a day out and the side of my face felt swollen, like I was having some sort of allergic reaction to something, and my whole left cheek by my jaw was swollen and raised. I figured I'd pop a couple of antihistamines and it'd be fine. Except, I tilted my head downwards to look at my shoes for whatever reason, and the swollen lump moved down my face, closer to my mouth. BC gravity, which was decidedly not something allergic reactions do. The lump settled over the corner of my mouth, almost on my lips, and I felt something poking out of my bottom lip. So I reached for it, and suddenly started pulling out this long, never-ending worm from my face. And it just kept coming and coming the more I pulled. And I was terrified to stop, because I didn't want any of it to linger in my face. So I just kept pulling. Which is when I woke up in absolute terror and have yet to shake the vivid memory of the horror. When I was a child, I used to dream about this witch who was basically a giant set of eyes that would almost scream and move, and I always tried to close my eyes hard as possible to don't see it. Not my nightmare, but my sister's. When she was about 8, I was about 5. She would occasionally wake up to a very tall silhouetted man wearing a top hat standing just outside her room. Watching her, she would sit, unable to move until she eventually woke up. This happened pretty frequently. One night, it happened again. The same top hat wearing man just watching her from outside her room. He walked down the hallway out of view, and she decided to get out of bed and follow him. My read MAMCA Kamar Nuri MC Rame COESETMRO Alomar C position crying, with the top hat man holding his hand over me. She woke up crying, and strangely, the nightmare seemed to stop after that. Being stabbed, the pain I felt was so scarily realistic I woke up and cried. Demons in my bedroom felt so real it scared me. I hid under my pillow and blankets for a while. Well, E0 Al or Crew ACEI Lolly. I had a nightmare where my grandmother, who had died 2 years prior, was still alive, but very unhappy and restless. Not too horrible, I know, but the dream took a turn for the worst as she told me she was tired of life and wanted it to be over and committed suicide then and there. Could not sleep for hours after that. Having sex with my brother, and enjoying it barf. Biggest bra moment. I once had a nightmare in a post-apocalyptic world, where the sky was black yet had an eerie, purple glow. I was with my best friend, Alex, and my other friend Jamali. Jamali disappeared for no apparent reason. BCY*, no dreams are like that, and there were a few other PPL who were a part of the group but I didn't know them. They were like random faces your brain made up. I was the leader of this group of kids for some reason. We were traveling until we came across an abandoned building which we then proceeded to search for resources. We were leaving when Alex got shot in the neck by a tiny kind of robot bug. Weird IK, but I cried over his death as I have known him since I was 4 years old. We quickly ran out of the house. After this it gets a bit fuzzy, but I think it had something to do with a refuge town. I started to realize I was dreaming and I was having a mental breakdown knowing I'd have to tell the rest of the group they weren't real and just a figment of imagination. Then I wondered if they already knew. Why would I even need to tell them? I can't remember anything else, but yay. This was the most vivid nightmare I've ever had. It seemed so real, yet I knew something was wrong the entire dream. Write a little novel out of this lol. Me and my brother 13 and 8 are in a lake and he starts to drown and I can't reach him no matter how much I swim down to get him. And I watch the life fade from his eyes as he drowns. Drowning is one of my reoccurring nightmares tbh. Our world was a simulation that was crashing before my eyes. It was the most vivid dream I've ever had. And, aside from the obvious, the most realistic. I posted the whole thing in our dreams. You can read it here. I've had one of THSE and it took me forever to get over it. Those are the worst, when shit just goes totally wrong and you wake up crying, unable to do anything. This one happened a couple years ago. I dreamt that I was sitting in my art class and our teacher was sick, but we got the task to continue our artwork. But everyone's was already done or nearly finished, so soon we had nothing to do. That's when one of the popular girls grabbed a box out of her backpack. It was an Ouija board. She placed it on the table and was able to convince everyone to play. That's when the scary shit happened. Everyone got pushed to the wall by an invisible force. That popular girl floated up in the air and cockroaches, moths crawled out of every hole in her body. Then black ooze flowed out, and lastly she let out a haunting scream for whole the school. That it hurted our ears. We could see that her arms, legs, head were being ripped off slowly. Then she was thrown out of the window. The art class was on the 3rd floor. My friend and some others from the nearby class ran outside, and there we found her dismembered body laying in a pool of black ooze of blood. Creepy thing is, I had art class the next day and our teacher was sick. And that popular classmate did bring out an Ouija board. I never had watched horror movies or saw, heard or knew anything about such disturbing things. Till this day I still don't know why I had that nightmare. Just a few days back I dreamt I was at the funeral of my ex. Her father hugged him and cried. I go to see her. I touch her hand and cheeks, she feels warm. I tell to everyone present that she feels warm. Everyone told me I am in shock. And then to M surprise, she starts talking to me. To every else present, she was lying dead, but I could hear and see her talking to me. Then she proceeds to sit up and ask me, what's happening to me? And I screamed, you have embalming fluid leaking from your feet. I woke up sweating like I came out of shower. Wow, that's really spooky. I've had one similar. The house was on fire but no one else could see it. Edit. We were in the house, not just watching it from outside. JW, were you together at the time of the dream? When I was a kid, I would get these nightmares when I had a high fever. Except I was awake. They were more like hallucinations. I still have vivid memories of them. But the only way I can describe them is the worst fear, anxiety I have ever felt. My sense of reality was completely warped. One I remember pretty clearly. I was freaking out because the maid couldn't get in because there were too many bricks in the wall. Weird, I know, but even saying that still gives me the chills. I would walk around the house crying with this terrible feeling of existential dread. My parents would try to calm me down, to no avail, and like I said, I still remember it all. I just wasn't conscious. Most definitely the most uncomfortable feeling I've ever had. I hope this made sense. I still don't understand it, and it's even harder to try and explain it. Apocalyptic nightmare. The moon was getting larger and gravitating gradually toward Earth. Something in space had caused the Earth to be smothered by darkness. The sun was nowhere to be seen. Astronomers and physicists from all over the world had no idea what was going on. Ordinary people plus soldiers had all gathered with their guns pointing to the sky, waiting for something to descend. Never been so fucking terrified in a dream before. Had this dream as a teenager. Home invasion. 3 armed men holding my family at gunpoint. Want us to get in the basement. I'm the last to walk down the stairs. And I turn to one of them and ask, you're just going to kill us no matter what we do, right? Quote. He simply answers, yes. In that moment, in that dream, I remember this feeling of absolute certainty that I was going to die, and the utterly helpless feeling when I realized I could do nothing to stop it. Woke up before anything happened, but that's one nightmare I will always remember. I was tied up in a spider web with a giant spider, eight-legged freak size, lowering down towards me, and I couldn't move. Husband eventually managed to wake me up. Apparently I was screaming in my sleep. Full-on screaming. Even had neighbors coming to knock on the door to make sure I was okay. When I woke up, I realized I had no voice. I'd been screaming that much that I'd wrecked my throat. Couldn't do more than a husky whisper for the next few days. Giant arachnids are gonna get me in a nightmare one day, and I dread the day it happens. They say if you die in your dreams, you die in real life, and it's simply not true. I've died twice in my dreams and have felt the same sensation each time. The first time it happened, I was climbing this tower or castle and slipped, and when I hit the ground it felt like I was sinking into a black nothingness. The second time I was laying in bed and began to see a flashlight outside my window, and someone quickly opened it, looked in, and shot me in the head with an AR-15. I felt the bullet enter my skull, and same as before, I felt myself slipping into a black nothingness and woke up terrified. I DK what these dreams mean, but every time I have them they're so vivid and feel surreal. How does sleep paralysis happen? Can anyone get it? Any ways to prevent it? A bunch of my mom's faces circling around above my bed. I felt awake and hid under the covers. A hole in the basement wall with an old lady and her small dog sitting in it. Their eyes were black, with shining white pupils, and they just stared at me. Both of these I lived directly across the street from a graveyard. Oh man, as a kid I used to have terrifying nightmares, and now I don't dream at all. I could list like 4 or 5, but one still remember is, I wake up from a nightmare and I run to my mom's room. I start shaking her to wake up, saying I had a nightmare, but she doesn't wake up, and suddenly a bunch of dirty arms reach out under the bed and begin pulling me under, and I'm screaming for my mom, but she never wakes up, and then I finally wake up for real, and needless to say I did not go to her room afterward. Ponkrell came back from the dead and killed Rex. I dreamed a dream of time by when hope was high and life worth living. I dreamed that love would never die. I was in this crazy decorated room somewhere tropical and warm, and I got stabbed with a sword. Straight up run through by some motherfucker. Only, I didn't wake up as I was about to get stabbed. I vividly remember getting run through. I died in the dream, and then woke up. TPT. Oof. I mean, when I was a little kid I had a nightmare that a T-Rex went around destroying everything and everyone. It seemed like it lasted for a while, and I still remember it pretty clearly considering how long it's been. I was on my grandparents' back porch. I was chatting with my grandma when I saw something like a gorilla suit running to where I was, like that one off of SpongeBob. I said something to my grandma, but she ignored me. As it got closer I got even more scared. When it got within 10 yards of me I woke up scared shitless. I've had this happen to me, and I woke up before it reached me too. I was running away from someone and then climbed a tree. Suddenly he was right below me with a gun pointed at my face. I knew I was going to die. So basically in this dream I was a teenage girl, whereas I am a boy in real life, and my boyfriend died. I went back in a time machine and saw him as a kid, and the teacher knew I was his future girlfriend. Anyways, talked to him, helped him make parts and crafts, ended up sobbing while the Moonlight song by Claude Debussy played in the background. Woke up crying. Would never wish losing a loved one on anyone after that dream. I have lost all my great-grandparents, but wasn't sad because I never really knew them when I was a kid. Love that song. THSC dreams are always rough though. 3 cookies help us deliver our services. By using our services or clicking I agree, you agree to our use of cookies. Learn more